The void of space stretched endlessly before the observation deck of Volcar 9, its darkness punctuated by the brilliance of distant stars and the occasional flash of a passing transport vessel. Lieutenant Ray Morgan stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass. Dark circles underlined her eyes, souvenirs from countless restless nights across battlefields both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. She had been stationed at this frontier outpost for precisely 36 hours, and already the whispers had begun. Is that her, the human? What's Earth classified as again? Deathworld category, what? Not even category 3, hardly worth mentioning. Ray didn't turn to acknowledge the murmurs. She'd heard worse throughout her career in Syrian killing fields, during the resource wars on Titan's methane lakes, and now, here at the periphery of what humans called civilized space. To these aliens, she was nothing more than an oddity, a bipedal curiosity, with neither natural armor nor intimidating appendages, lacking venom sacs or regenerative capabilities. Just a fragile pink-skinned monkey that somehow learned to travel between stars. Lieutenant Morgan, a modulated voice called from behind her. Your presence is requested on Deck 7. There's been an incident with a passing Krell transport. Ray nodded at the reflection of the station's AI interface, a floating blue sphere that hovered at her shoulder height. What kind of incident? The kind that requires human intervention? The AI replied, managing to sound both cryptic and urgent. 20 minutes later, Ray stood before a tactical display, alongside 3 other Earth expedition members. Captain Hernandez, their commanding officer, gestured toward a holographic representation of a nearby shipping lane. The Krell transport was ambushed here, just outside our jurisdiction. Hernandez explained, his finger tracing the trajectory of the besieged vessel. Preliminary scans indicate Juthari raiders. Ray felt her stomach tighten. The Juthari apex predators from a world of endless twilight and perpetual hunt. Their elongated bodies were covered in a carapace rivaling tank armor, while their multiple limbs ended in serrated blades, evolved for one purpose: efficient killing. The Krell are requesting assistance, Hernandez continued. They're transporting medical supplies to the Orion cluster. Civilian operation. And why exactly are we getting involved? Asked Specialist Rivera, the team's tactical officer. This isn't Earth's fight. Hernandez's expression darkened. Because, Specialist, this is exactly how we establish ourselves out here. The Deathworlders Council runs this sector through intimidation and predation. I intend to show them there's another way. Ray studied the tactical display, her mind already mapping vectors and approaches. The Juthari hunt in packs of 3 to 5. They'll have the transport cornered against the asteroid field here. She pointed to a dense cluster of space debris. That's where I'd set an ambush. Assessment matches tactical projection. The station AI confirmed. Hernandez nodded. Lieutenant Morgan will lead the rescue operation. Take Specialist Rivera Bellamy and Dr. Quinn. Keep this surgical. We're making a point, not starting a war. Ray suppressed a grimace. She'd hoped for at least a week to acclimate to her new posting before being thrust into combat, but the universe rarely accommodated such preferences. Understood, sir. We'll deploy in 15. As they filed out of the briefing room, Specialist Jack Snipes Rivera sidled up beside her. So, what's the plan, LT? We going in hot? Ray shook her head. We're going in smart. Gather whatever tech you can jury-rig in the next 10 minutes. I want jammers, disruptors, anything that'll give those Juthari a headache without killing them. Rivera's eyebrows shot up. Not killing them, that's ambitious. That's the mission, Ray replied flatly. 15 minutes later, their interceptor craft detached from Volcar 9's docking bay engines, flaring to life as they accelerated toward the coordinates of the ambushed Krell transport. Inside the ship's narrow confines, Ray checked her gear one final time, a standard-issue pulse rifle combat knife, and the small kit of improvised solutions she'd carried since her days in Earth's Special Forces. Approaching contact zone, announced Specialist Bella Bellamy from the pilot seat. A former asteroid miner turned military Bellamy had a preternatural sense for navigating debris fields. I can see the transport. 3 Juthari vessels circling it like sharks. Comms are being jammed, Rivera added from the tactical station. The Krell can't call for help. They already did, Ray replied. That's why we're here. Dr. Quinn's status on the medical packages. Dr. Eliza Quinn, the team's combat medic, patted a case beside her. Ready to deploy countermeasures, Lieutenant? Though I still think this is a bit like bringing a scalpel to a sword fight. Ray allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes a well-placed incision is more effective than a decapitation. She turned to Bellamy. Take us in silent running. Use the largest asteroids for cover. Their interceptor slipped into the asteroid field thrusters, firing in short, controlled bursts to minimize their signature. Through the viewport, Ray could see the Krell transport, a bulbous vessel with iridescent hull plates that shimmered even in the dim light. Around it, 3 predatory ships moved with fluid grace, occasionally firing warning shots that scorched the transport's outer shell. Juthari combat pattern, Rivera whispered, almost reverently. The dance of closing jaws. They're toying with the Krell before boarding. Not today, Ray said. Bella, bring us above and behind the lead Juthari vessel. Snipes, prepare the EM disruptor. Dr. Quinn, stand by with the sensory overload package. Their ship drifted silently into position, using a tumbling asteroid for cover. Below them, the lead Juthari vessel extended docking clamps toward the Krell transport. They're initiating boarding procedures, Rivera warned. Ray's finger hovered over the deployment switch. And, now. A pulse of electromagnetic energy erupted from their ship, washing over the Juthari vessel like an invisible tide. Immediately, the predatory ship's systems flickered, its docking procedure halted mid-execution. Direct hit, Rivera confirmed. Their primary systems are scrambled. Secondary vessels are breaking formation to investigate. Perfect. Ray unstrapped herself from her seat. Bella, bring us alongside the transport. Dr. Quinn, prepare for rapid boarding action. Snipes, you're with me. Minutes later, Ray and Rivera had crossed the short gap between their interceptor and the Krell transport via emergency docking tubes. The interior of the alien vessel was bathed in emergency lighting, dim amber pulses that cast long shadows across organic-looking corridors. Life signs, Ray asked, her pulse rifle raised. Rivera consulted his scanner. 4 Krell crew members in what I'm guessing is the command center. Another Juthari life sign just entered the vessel through the lower docking port. One already got through, Ray muttered. Let's move. They advanced through the ship's curving passageways, following Rivera's scanner. The architecture was unlike anything Ray had encountered before, more reminiscent of veins and arteries than corridors and chambers. The Krell, a species evolved from aquatic mollusks, designed their ships to resemble the internal structures of their ancient predators, a psychological comfort in the cold void of space. Contact, Rivera whispered, pointing ahead. Juthari moving toward the command center. Ray held up a closed fist, signaling a halt. She could hear it now, the metallic scraping of blade limbs against the ship's interior, accompanied by a low, predatory clicking sound that needed no translation. The Juthari was hunting. I'll flank right, Ray whispered. Create a distraction on my mark. Rivera nodded, unspooling a small device from his tactical vest. Ray recognized it as a sonic disruptor, designed to emit frequencies particularly painful to species with heightened auditory sensitivity. The Juthari, with their acute evolutionary senses, would find it especially disorienting. Ray moved silently through a parallel corridor, her boots making no sound on the organic textured flooring. Years of combat experience had taught her to distribute her weight perfectly, to become as silent as the void itself. She reached a junction and peered around the corner. The Juthari warrior stood approximately 20 meters away, its chitinous body easily twice her height. 6 bladed limbs extended from its torso, while a crested head swiveled smoothly, scanning for prey. Its carapace gleamed with a dull, metallic luster under the emergency light's natural armor that could withstand most conventional weapons. Ray tapped her comm unit twice the signal for Rivera to activate the disruptor. A high-pitched wail erupted from behind the Juthari, causing it to rear back in obvious pain. Its blade limbs flailed wildly as it spun toward the source of its discomfort. Rey moved. She sprinted forward, keeping low to the ground. The Juthari, distracted by Rivera's sonic attack, didn't notice her approach until she was almost upon it. When it finally sensed her presence, one of its secondary limbs lashed out with blinding speed, a reflexive strike that would have bisected a slower opponent. But Rey wasn't slow. She ducked beneath the bladed appendage, feeling the air displacement as it passed centimeters above her head. In the same fluid motion, she withdrew a length of high-tension wire from her kit and looped it around the base of the limb where the exoskeleton was thinnest. The Juthari screeched a sound, somewhere between rage and surprise, as it tried to pull away. Rey leveraged her body weight against the wire, applying pressure to the exact point where chitin met flesh. A sharp crack echoed through the corridor as the blade limbs separated from the alien's body. Black ichor sprayed across Rey's uniform as she rolled away from the wounded predator. The Juthari, now off balance and in pain, lurched toward her, with its remaining limbs extended. Rivera appeared at the far end of the corridor, his pulse rifle raised. "Lieutenant, clear." Rey dropped flat against the deck as Rivera fired. The pulse blast struck the Juthari directly in its sensory cluster, instantly overloading its neural pathways. The massive predator collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs and leaking fluids. Non-lethal takedown. Rivera confirmed, approaching cautiously. "It'll wake up with the mother of all headaches, but it'll live." Rey rose to her feet, wiping alien blood from her face. "Let's get to the command center before its friends come looking." The Krell crew cowered when Rey and Rivera first entered their command center, 4 gelatinous beings, with multiple eye stalks and undulating tentacles for manipulating controls. It took several minutes of calm explanation through the translation matrix before they understood that the humans had come to help, not hunt. Gratitude flows like deep currents. The Krell captain finally warbled its translator, struggling with the species' fluid language. "But danger remains. More predators circle our vessel." "Not for long," Rey assured them, activating her comlink. "Dr. Quinn's status on the package?" "Ready to deploy on your mark, Lieutenant," came the reply. "Execute." Outside, in the vacuum between the ships, dozens of small canisters ejected from the human interceptor. They drifted toward the 2 remaining Juthari vessels, magnetizing to their hulls before releasing their payloads, a specialized compound that rapidly expanded into a translucent, amber-colored foam. The substance hardened instantly in the cold of space, encasing large portions of the predatory ships in what appeared to be solidified honey. "What manner of weapon is this?" the Krell captain asked, its eye stalks extending in fascination as they watched through the command center's viewport. "Not a weapon," Rey corrected. "Rapid hardening industrial resin. We use it for emergency hull repairs. The Juthari ships aren't damaged, just temporarily inconvenienced." The implications weren't lost on the Krell. The humans could have destroyed the Juthari vessels, but had chosen restraint instead. Victory without annihilation, a concept foreign in a sector ruled by predatory domination. "You have made enemies today." The Krell captain observed its translator, rendering the statement with unexpected clarity. Rey watched as the immobilized Juthari ships struggled against their resin prisons. "No," she replied quietly. "Today, we just introduced ourselves." 3 days later, Rey stood at attention in Captain Hernandez's office as he reviewed the after-action report. The rescue of the Krell transport had been successful, and the medical supplies had continued to their destination in the Orion cluster. The Juthari raiders had eventually freed themselves from the resin encasement and retreated to their territory, humiliated but alive. "The Deathworlders Council has requested a formal explanation," Hernandez said, setting down the datapad. "Apparently defeating a Juthari warrior with, and I quote, primitive cordage and kinetic force, has caused quite the stir." Rey maintained her professional composure. Sir, I utilized available resources to neutralize the threat with minimal force. Standard operating procedure for first contact scenarios. Hernandez leaned back in his chair, the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The Juthari have filed a formal protest claiming that your methods were beneath the dignity of proper combat between apex species. I wasn't aware that combat had dignity, sir. Neither was I, Lieutenant. Hernandez activated a holographic display on his desk. An official communication bearing the seal of the Deathworlders Council rotated slowly above its surface. They've requested an official representative from Earth to appear before the Council and explain our aberrant combat methodology. Ray felt a weight settle in her stomach. They want one of us to stand trial. Not exactly, Hernandez clarified. They want to understand us. We've disrupted their hierarchy. In their eyes, species from low-category deathworlds like Earth shouldn't be able to defeat apex predators like the Juthari. And you're volunteering me as the educational demonstration? Hernandez nodded. You and a small team. Consider it a diplomatic mission with the potential for creative problem-solving. Ray's jaw tightened. She recognized a suicide mission when she heard one. When do we leave? 0600 tomorrow. You'll take Specialist Rivera and Bellamy along with Dr. Quinn. The council chamber is located on a neutral station at the confluence of the 3 major Deathworlder territories. It should take approximately 4 days to reach it at standard FTL. And our objective, sir? Hernandez's expression grew serious. Your objective, Lieutenant Morgan, is to ensure that the next time humanity encounters the species of this sector, they think twice before viewing us as prey. As Ray turned to leave, Hernandez added one final comment. Oh, and Lieutenant, try not to start an interstellar war. We've only just arrived in this neighborhood. Ray nodded stiffly. I'll do my best, sir. I know you will. That's what worries me. The journey to the council station passed in relative silence, each member of Ray's team preparing in their own way for whatever awaited them. Rivera spent hours analyzing what little intelligence they had on the various Deathworlder species, compiling a database of physiological weaknesses and behavioral patterns. Bellamy practiced meditation techniques developed for zero-gravity emergencies, her focus unbreakable. Dr. Quinn inventoried her medical supplies, adapting standard treatments for potentially non-human applications. Ray slept, or tried to. Each time she closed her eyes, memories surfaced like corpses in a flooded battlefield. Syrian insurgents with their faces melted by chemical agents. The methane burns that covered 60% of her body after the Titan campaign. The screams of her former squad mates as they succumbed to alien pathogens on Proxima Centauri b. Survival had become her expertise, trauma, her constant companion. Can't sleep, Dr. Quinn asked, finding Ray in the ship's small mess area during the night cycle of their 3rd day of travel. Ray glanced up from her cup of synthetic coffee. Just reviewing mental scenarios. Quinn smiled knowingly as she poured herself a beverage. That's what we're calling nightmares these days. I don't have nightmares, Doctor. I have tactical recollections. Of course, Quinn sat across from her. And those tactical recollections just happen to increase your cortisol levels and cause REM disruption. Ray sighed. She'd never been able to maintain her professional mask around Quinn. During the brutal fighting on Titan, it had been Quinn who'd pieced her back together, who'd held her hand during the skin grafts, who'd talked her through the worst of the PTSD episodes. What are we walking into, Eliza? Ray asked quietly, dropping formality. Quinn considered the question. Based on what I've read about the Council, we're walking into a gathering of species that have evolved in environments where killing is the primary means of survival. They respect strength dominance and predatory efficiency, none of which we possess, at least not in the way they measure it. That's where you're wrong, Quinn leaned forward. Humans evolved on a predator-rich savanna where we were neither the strongest nor the fastest. So instead, we became the most creative killers in our food chain. Ray's lips quirked into a half-smile. Are you saying we should wow them with interpretive dance? I'm saying that when a lion faces another lion, they both know the rules of engagement. But when a lion faces a human, Quinn, let the thought hang in the air. The lion doesn't know what the hell is about to happen, Ray finished. Exactly. Quinn stood, placing a reassuring hand on Ray's shoulder. Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow we dance with the lions. The council station loomed before them as they dropped out of FTL, a massive structure composed of interlocking rings that rotated at different velocities, creating variable gravity environments to accommodate the physiological needs of different species. The outer ring was reserved for ships to dock, while the innermost ring housed the council chamber itself. Atmospheric composition is within human tolerance, Rivera reported as they approached the docking procedure. Gravity in the council chamber is set to 1.3 times Earth standard. They're making us work for it. Noted, Ray replied, checking the seal on her uniform one final time. Standard Earth expeditionary gear with minimal modifications. She wanted the council to see humans, as they were not hidden behind protective armor or environmental suits. It was a calculated risk. A reception committee awaited them at the airlock, two towering core warriors, flanking a smaller bipedal alien with translucent skin through which complex organ systems were visible. The core were legendary even among Deathworlders, evolved from apex predators, on a world with triple Earth's gravity, their muscular bodies capable of tearing through spacecraft hulls with minimal effort. I am Xeris, the translucent being announced its voice, emanating not from a mouth, but from vibrating membranes along its neck. Neutral facilitator for the council. You have been granted audience to explain your intervention against council members. Ray stepped forward. Lieutenant Ray Morgan, Earth Expeditionary Force. We accept the council's invitation. Xeris's internal organs pulsed with what might have been amusement. Not an invitation, human, a summons. Follow. They were led through corridors, bustling with alien life. Some bipedal, others moving on multiple limbs or slithering across the deck plating. What united them all was a predatory awareness, a constant calculation of threat assessment that Ray recognized from Earth's most dangerous combat zones. Every being here had evolved to kill efficiently. The council chamber itself was a vast amphitheater, with tiered seating arranged in a complete circle around a central platform. Representatives from at least 20 different species occupied these seats, their diverse physiologies adapted for one common purpose: dominance in their respective ecological niches. At the highest tier sat three imposing figures, representatives of the founding Deathworlder species that controlled the sector. The core delegate was a massive specimen, its four arms rippling with muscle beneath leathery hide covered in bony protrusions. Beside it sat a Varix representative, its form shifting continuously between visibility and near transparency, the adaptive camouflage that made its species the galaxy's most feared assassins. The third founder, a Juthari elder, clicked its blade limbs impatiently as the humans were escorted to the central platform. The council acknowledges the presence of the Earth delegation, Xeris announced from a smaller podium adjacent to the platform. They come before you to explain their interference with a rightful hunt conducted by Juthari scouts in neutral territory. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some translated through Ray's earpiece, others too alien for the translation matrix to process. The underlying sentiment, however, was clear: confusion, disdain, and predatory curiosity. The Juthari elder rose its blade limbs, catching the light. The human female disabled Huntmaster Kirik, using primitive methods unbefitting combat between predatory species. She must answer for this dishonor. Ray stepped forward before Xeris could respond. Where I come from, there is no honor in combat, only survival. The Juthari were attacking a medical transport carrying supplies for civilian use. We intervened using minimal force to resolve the situation. Bar. Minimal force. The core delegate's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You severed a Juthari war limb with a length of wire. This is not the action of an apex species. It is the desperate tactic of prey. Laughter echoed through the chamber, a discordant symphony of clicks, growls, and hisses that needed no translation. Ray stood her ground. If it's stupid but works, it isn't stupid. The laughter died abruptly, replaced by confused silence. Explain this concept, demanded the Varix representative, its form solidifying briefly to reveal multi-layered eyes, studying her with unsettling intensity. Humans don't fight to display dominance, Ray explained, meeting the alien's gaze. We fight to win. The method is irrelevant as long as the objective is achieved. The Juthari elders, clicking, grew agitated. This is the philosophy of scavengers, not hunters. You confirm what we suspected: humans are Category 2 Deathworlders at best, using trickery to compensate for evolutionary inadequacy. Ray felt her teammates tense behind her. The insult was clear even across species barriers. Perhaps a demonstration would clarify our position in your hierarchy. Ray suggested, her voice calm, despite the spike in her pulse rate. A practical exercise, rather than theoretical debate. The three founders conferred briefly. Their communication methods varied, but their intent unified. Finally, the core delegate addressed the chamber. The human challenges the council's assessment. Its massive hands gripped the railing before it bending the metal slightly. We accept. You will participate in the blood trial on Sarakar 4. A collective intake of breath swept through the assembly. Even Xeris seemed startled, its internal organs flushing with darker colors. Lieutenant Rivera whispered urgently behind her. I don't know what Sarakar 4 is, but based on the reaction, we don't want to go there. Ray maintained her composure. What is the blood trial? The Juthari elders' blade limbs clicked together in what might have been anticipation. A simple test of evolutionary fitness. Survive 5 cycles on the surface of Sarakar 4, a Category 9 death world. No species below Category 7 has ever completed the trial. And if we succeed, Ray asked, then humans will be reassessed. The Varex stated, its form rippling like water disturbed by a stone, and granted appropriate standing within the hierarchy of predators. Ray nodded slowly, aware that she had just committed her team to something that might well be a death sentence. We accept. Wait, Dr. Quinn interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Ray. As the medical officer of this delegation, I request details on the environmental conditions of Sarakar 4 for preparation purposes. The core delegate barked something that the translator rendered as laughter. The human wishes to prepare, as if knowledge would help against the world that breaks predators. The Varix, however, tilted its semi-visible head in what might have been acknowledgement. The atmosphere contains high concentrations of methane and hydrogen sulfide. Surface gravity is 1.4 times Earth standard. Mean temperature at the equator exceeds 50 degrees Celsius. The planet hosts approximately 15,000 cataloged predatory species, with new ones discovered each cycle. Thank you, Quinn replied, with professional courtesy, though Ray could see the concern etched in the lines around her eyes. You depart in 6 hours, the Juthari elder announced. Choose your equipment with care, humans. It will be the last choice most of you make. As they were escorted from the chamber, Bellamy moved closer to Ray. Lieutenant, what the hell did you just volunteer us for? Ray waited until they were alone in a preparation room, assigned to them before responding. A suicide mission, most likely, but also our only chance to establish humanity's position out here. By getting ourselves killed on some hellscape planet? Rivera asked, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. No, Ray replied, her gaze sweeping across her team. By surviving it. The preparation room contained basic survival equipment presumably deemed suitable for their trial: atmosphere converters, thermal regulation units, water purifiers, and nutrient supplements calibrated for human physiology. What it lacked were weapons, communications devices, or any form of advanced technology. They're sending us in naked, Rivera observed, as he inventoried their meager supplies. These packs won't last more than 2 days in extreme conditions. Ray nodded, unsurprised. They want us to fail, but they've made a critical error. Which is? Bellamy asked, strapping a utility knife to her belt, the only tool with any potential as a weapon. They think we're going to fight like they do. Ray began methodically disassembling one of the atmospheric converters, extracting components, and repurposing them. We're not. Dr. Quinn watched her with growing understanding. We're going to fight like humans. Exactly. Ray held up a small circuit board she'd extracted. Snipes, can you repurpose this to detect electrical discharges? Rivera took the component, examining it with expert eyes. Probably. You thinking of using atmospheric electricity as a weapon? Among other things. Ray turned to Bellamy. How's your memory for topographical adaptation? Bellamy smiled for the first time since they'd arrived at the station. I mapped 300 asteroids in the Kuiper Belt with nothing but visual cues. Give me an hour on any terrain and I'll know it better than the natives. Good. That's our first priority when we land, understand the environment and make it work for us. Ray looked at Quinn. Doctor, we'll need your expertise on xenobiology. Anything that can kill us can also be used to kill something else. Quinn nodded grimly. I'll do what I can, but with no research equipment. Use what we have, Ray insisted. Human ingenuity has always been our most effective weapon. For the next several hours, they worked to modify their limited supplies into tools that might give them an edge on Sarikar 4. Rivera converted atmospheric filters into rudimentary sensors, while Bellamy fashioned crude traps from components of their thermal regulation units. Quinn extracted chemicals from their medical supplies that could be used as either treatments or toxins, depending on the application. Ray, meanwhile, focused on strategy, mentally preparing for a world designed to kill anything that set foot on its surface. When the core escorts returned to lead them to the departure bay, they found the humans ready, their modified equipment packed efficiently into improvised harnesses. The prey prepares for slaughter. One of the core rumbled its translator, doing little to mask the contempt in its voice. Ray merely smiled in response, a tight expression that didn't reach her eyes. We prefer to think of it as dinner preparation. We just haven't decided what's on the menu yet. The shuttle descent to Sarikar 4 was deliberately rough, the council-appointed pilot making no effort to smooth their entry into the planet's turbulent atmosphere. As the craft bucked and shuddered around them, Ray studied the rapidly approaching surface through a viewport. Sarikar IV was a study in hostility, vast swathes of dense purple-tinged vegetation, interrupted by smoking volcanic plains and acidic water bodies that gleamed with an unnatural blue luminescence. The sky burned orange with chemical interactions between the upper atmosphere and the planet's twin suns, casting an apocalyptic glow over the landscape. Landing zone approaching, the pilot announced with what sounded like sadistic pleasure. Prepare for deployment. There was no gentle touchdown, no gradual acclimation period. The shuttle hovered 3 meters above a relatively flat expanse of rock, its cargo bay doors slamming open to expose the humans to their first breath of Sarikar's toxic atmosphere. 5 cycles. The pilot reminded them through their environmental masks communication system. A recovery vessel will return to these coordinates after 120 hours, if there's anything left to recover. With that, the shuttle's gravity field deactivated unceremoniously, dumping the humans and their equipment onto the harsh surface below. Ray landed in a controlled roll, absorbing the impact through years of combat training. Her teammates followed suit, though Rivera audibly winced as his shoulder connected with the rocky ground. The shuttle departed immediately, leaving them in a swirling cloud of dust and noxious gases that their masks struggled to filter completely. Status check, Ray called, rising to a defensive crouch as she scanned their surroundings. Operational, Bellamy reported, already assessing the terrain with practiced eyes. Equipment intact, Rivera added, checking his improvised sensor array. Minor contusions, only. Quinn confirmed after a quick examination of each team member. Environmental suits holding, but these filters won't last the full 5 days in this atmosphere. Ray nodded, having expected as much. Priority 1 is secure shelter. Bellamy, what's our best option? The former asteroid miner was already calculating, her gaze sweeping across the alien landscape. Those rock formations to the west provide better cover than this exposed plain. They look volcanic, might offer cave systems we could utilize. Agreed. Rivera sensor readings. Rivera consulted his cobbled-together device, getting some strange electrical patterns from the direction of those blue pools. Could be chemical reactions, could be biological. Hard to tell with this equipment. Keep monitoring. Dr. Quinn analysis of the local flora. Quinn was carefully examining a cluster of purple vegetation at the edge of their landing zone. Definitely toxic, the tendrils are actually exuding a caustic substance. I'd advise against direct contact with any plant life until we can test it properly. Noted. Let's move toward those rock formations. Standard diamond formation, 5-meter spread. Stay visible to at least 2 team members at all times. They moved across the alien terrain with practiced efficiency, each step carefully placed to minimize noise and disturbance of the environment. The higher gravity made movement more laborious, but they'd trained for such conditions during the Titan campaign, where gravity fluctuations were common near the methane processing facilities. Halfway to the rock formations, Rivera's sensor emitted a soft ping. Movement underground, Lieutenant. Something large approximately 20 meters north of our position. The team froze in unison, weapons ready, though their weapons consisted primarily of repurposed tools and crude spears fashioned from equipment components. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, then stilled. "It stopped moving," Rivera whispered, after consulting his sensor again. "Could be lying in wait." Ray made a quick decision. "Change course. Head 30 degrees south, then arc back toward the rock formation. Bellamy, find us the path of most resistance." "Most resistance?" Bellamy questioned, though she was already adjusting their route. "Whatever's under there is adapted to hunt prey that tries to flee directly," Ray explained. "So we do the unexpected move across terrain that would slow or impede natural movement. Maximize distance between our footfalls to distribute weight signatures." Understanding dawned across her teammates' faces. They weren't thinking like prey trying to escape. They were thinking like hunters disrupting tracking patterns. The detour added precious time to their journey, but they reached the volcanic rock formations without incident. Up close, the structures revealed themselves to be ancient lava tubes, hollow conduits formed by prehistoric magma flows that had long since cooled and solidified. Defensible. Ray assessed, examining one tube entrance. "Single access point, we can monitor stable ceiling structure and—" She paused, noticing something unusual about the rock composition. "Dr. Quinn, what do you make of this material?" Quinn ran her fingers along the glassy interior surface. "It's not just volcanic glass. There's some kind of biological residue integrated into the structure. Almost like a nest." Rivera finished his sensor pinging again. "And I'm getting readings from inside, faint but present." Ray considered their options. Finding another shelter would burn daylight they couldn't afford to lose, but occupying an existing predator's territory carried its own risks. "We take it," she decided. "Rivera, set up your sensor array at the entrance. Bellamy, map the interior as far as visibility allows. Dr. Quinn, analyze that biological residue. I want to know what we're potentially dealing with." "And you, Lieutenant?" Quinn asked. Ray removed her pack, extracting several modified components. "I'm going hunting." "For what?" Rivera asked, alarmed. "Information," Ray replied, assembling what appeared to be a crude recording device. "The first rule of survival isn't finding water or shelter. It's understanding what's trying to kill you." Within an hour, they had established a basic operational perimeter. The lava tube extended approximately 40 meters into the rock formation before narrowing too severely for human passage. The biological residue, according to Quinn's analysis, contained compounds similar to Earth spider silk, but with molecular structures designed to withstand extreme heat and acidity. "Whatever spun this doesn't just live in the tubes," Quinn explained, as they gathered near the entrance. "It uses them as ambush points. See these trace patterns. They suggest the creature emerges periodically, likely during the planet's cooling cycle." "Which would be when?" Ray asked. Bellamy, who had been observing the twin suns' trajectory, offered an educated guess. Based on the orbital mechanics, I can observe we've got maybe 4 hours before the smaller sun sets. Temperature should drop significantly then. Ray nodded. So we have 4 hours to prepare for our roommate's return. Rivera status on the exterior sensors. Operational but limited, he reported. I've set proximity alerts for anything larger than a human, approaching within 15 meters of the entrance. Good. Now we need to establish our position in the local food chain. Ray unfolded a crude map she'd sketched based on their observations. There are 3 primary threats we need to address, whatever lives underneath the plane we crossed, whatever spun this silk in our current shelter, and... She pointed to the luminescent blue pools, visible in the distance. Whatever makes those pools glow like that. You're suggesting we confront these threats proactively? Quinn asked, her medical training naturally inclining her toward caution. I'm suggesting we redefine the variables, Ray clarified. In this environment, everything is either predator or prey. We need to introduce a third category that these native species have never encountered. Which is, Bellamy pressed. Ray's expression hardened with determined resolve. Chaos. The plan they developed over the next few hours defied conventional survival strategies. Instead of barricading themselves within their shelter or attempting to remain hidden from the planet's predators, they decided to announce their presence, but on their terms. Rivera repurposed their communication equipment to generate low-frequency pulses that would travel through the ground, creating artificial signatures that mimicked prey movement patterns. Bellamy established a network of trip lines and pressure sensors around their perimeter, connected to improvised noisemakers that would alert them to approaching threats. Dr. Quinn, meanwhile, extracted compounds from the toxic vegetation and combined them with chemicals from their medical supplies to create several vials of substances with specific properties, some designed to repel, others to attract or incapacitate. Ray focused on weaponizing the environment itself. She gathered samples of the caustic plant tendrils, carefully wrapping them around makeshift spears. She collected stones of various sizes for projectile weapons. Most importantly, she studied the behavioral patterns they could observe from their shelter. The movement of flying creatures across the orange sky, the interactions between different plant species, the subtle changes in the landscape as the smaller sun began its descent. It's almost beautiful, Bellamy remarked, as they watched the alien sunset from the relative safety of their shelter entrance. In a terrifying, everything wants to kill us kind of way. Ray nodded silently. In her years of combat, she'd learned to find beauty in the deadly, to appreciate the perfect engineering of a munitions explosion, or the graceful arc of orbital bombardment. Cherekar 4 was a masterpiece of evolutionary warfare, a planet where every adaptation served the singular purpose of survival. As the smaller sun disappeared beyond the horizon, the temperature began to drop precipitously. The purple vegetation around their shelter curled inward, sealing toxic tendrils within protective sheaths. The luminescence of the distant pools intensified, casting eerie blue light across the darkening landscape. Temperature dropping 5 degrees per minute. Quinn reported checking one of their few remaining functional instruments. Atmospheric composition, shifting methane concentration increasing. The planet's nocturnal cycle is beginning, Ray observed. Get ready. If our analysis is correct, the tube dweller will emerge soon. They didn't have to wait long. Rivera's proximity sensor gave a soft alert approximately 20 minutes after sunset. Something was approaching their position from deeper within the lava tube network. Heat signature detected, he whispered, positioning himself behind a natural rock formation inside the tube. Single entity larger than human-sized. Bellamy took position opposite Rivera, while Quinn remained near the entrance, ready to deploy her chemical deterrents, if necessary. Ray stood at the center of their formation, a caustic-tipped spear in one hand, a jury-rigged electrical discharge device in the other. The creature that emerged from the depths of the lava tube moved with unsettling fluidity, a segmented arachnoid body, supported by 8 jointed limbs that ended in serrated appendages. Its central mass, housed multiple sensory organs that swiveled independently, scanning the altered environment of its nest. Where a mouth might be expected, a complex arrangement of mandibles continuously flexed and contracted, dripping with phosphorescent fluid that sizzled when it contacted the rock floor. "Ambush predator," Quinn whispered over their comm system. "Those mandibles inject paralytic toxins, then the creature liquefies and consumes its prey." Web-spinning cave spider on steroids. Rivera added his sensor tracking the creature's movements. "It's detecting our modifications to its territory." The arachnoid paused its sensory organs, focusing on the human intruders, with what could only be described as predatory calculation. One segmented limb extended toward Ray, testing the air currents around her. "Nobody move," Ray ordered calmly. "It's assessing whether we're prey threat or something it hasn't categorized yet." The standoff lasted several tense seconds, predator and humans locked in silent evaluation. Then, with startling speed, the creature lunged not at the humans, but at the equipment they'd placed near the rear of the cave. "It's attacking our sensor array," Rivera exclaimed. "No," Ray countered, a glimmer of understanding forming. "It's neutralizing what it perceives as a competing predator's tool. It thinks we've taken over another hunter's territory." This realization changed their tactical approach instantly. Ray lowered her weapons and made a series of deliberate gestures that mimicked the creature's limb movements, not perfectly, but recognizably. "Lieutenant, what are you doing?" Quinn hissed. "Communicating," Ray replied, without breaking her pattern of movement. "In predator language." Remarkably, the arachnoid ceased its destruction of their equipment. Its sensory organs swiveled in unison toward Ray mandibles, slowing their rhythmic contractions. After what seemed an eternity, it extended two front limbs in a gesture that mirrored Ray's own. "It's acknowledging us as fellow predators," Ray explained quietly. "Not prey, not competition, but something it can coexist with, at least temporarily." "How could you possibly know that?" Bellamy asked, her spear still half raised. "Because that's what I would do if I encountered another apex hunter in my territory," Ray answered. "Establish boundaries without unnecessary conflict." With a fluid movement that belied its alien physiology, the arachnoid retreated to a side chamber of the lava tube, creating a clear division of territory between itself and the humans. There, it began systematically repairing damage to its silk structures, ignoring the intruders as long as they remained on their side of the invisible boundary. "Did we just negotiate a timeshare with a giant alien spider?" Rivera asked incredulously, once they'd regrouped near the entrance. "We established mutual recognition," Ray corrected. "It won't last. Evolutionary imperatives will eventually override, but it buys us the night cycle to prepare for tomorrow." "Prepare for what exactly?" Quinn asked. Ray's expression was one of grim determination. "To turn this planet's rules against itself." The next 2 days unfolded, according to a strategy, unlike anything the observing council members had anticipated. Through cameras hidden across Sarkarfi's surface, the Deathworlders watched in growing confusion as the humans neither fled from nor directly confronted the planet's apex predators. Instead, they did something utterly alien to the watching council members. They systematically remapped the ecological relationships of their surroundings. Using Rivera's repurposed sensors, they identified the underground creature that had detected them during their initial landing, a massive serpentine burrower with acidic saliva that it used to dissolve the rocky soil as it tunneled. Rather than avoiding its territory, they deliberately created false prey signatures at specific locations, effectively herding the creature toward the luminescent pools they had observed from a distance. The resulting confrontation revealed the nature of the pool's breeding grounds for colonial organisms that defended their territory with powerful bioelectric discharges. The burrower, lured into their midst, triggered a cascading defense response that illuminated the night sky with blue-white lightning, temporarily disrupting the local ecosystem's established patterns. In the confusion that followed, Ray's team collected samples of both the colonial organisms and the burrower's acidic saliva, which Dr. Quinn combined to create a compound that could temporarily neutralize the caustic properties of the purple vegetation. This innovation allowed them to harvest the plants, safely extracting fibers that Bellamy wove into reinforced cordage for more sophisticated traps. The deadfall traps they constructed claimed smaller predators, whose remains they strategically placed to attract scavengers, creating diversions that allowed the team to explore further from their shelter. "They're not hunting," the Corps delegate observed. On the third day, massive fists clenching in frustration as it watched the surveillance feeds. "They're orchestrating. The female leads them in patterns we cannot predict." The Juthari elder clicked, blade limbs twitching with agitation. "They do not fight as individuals nor as a coordinated unit like our hunter cadres." The Varix representative's form rippled with disturbed patterns. "They fight as if the entire planet is their weapon. They turn everything predator-prey environment into extensions of their will." By the beginning of the fourth day, Ray's team had established a perimeter extending several kilometers from their initial shelter. Within this territory, they had fundamentally altered the behavioral patterns of local predators, not through dominance displays or direct combat, but through systematic manipulation of environmental triggers and biological responses. "The Council is watching," Rivera remarked, as they prepared for a final push to secure their position. His improvised sensor array had detected the surveillance devices on their first day, though he'd carefully avoided alerting their observers to this discovery. "Good," Ray replied, adjusting a harness made from reprocessed arachnoid silk and the exoskeletons of smaller predators they'd trapped. "Let them see what happens when you underestimate humans." Their final demonstration came that night, when a Corps hunter was secretly dispatched to Sarakar's surface, an unannounced addition to their trial, sent by a council growing increasingly disturbed by the humans' unconventional success. The Corps warrior was a prime specimen, genetically enhanced and heavily armed, a veteran of 100 hunts across the most dangerous worlds in the sector. It tracked the humans with practiced efficiency, moving through the toxic landscape with the confidence of an apex predator, secure in its superiority. It never stood a chance. The humans had anticipated such intervention, had counted on it, in fact. The territory they'd established wasn't just a survival zone. It was an elaborate trap designed specifically for something intelligent enough to recognize patterns, but arrogant enough to believe itself exempt from them. The Corps triggered no fewer than 7 layered countermeasures before finally confronting Ray herself in a clearing surrounded by the luminescent pools. What the warrior perceived as a vulnerable human female, standing alone in the open, was in reality the culmination of 4 days of environmental engineering. "You were sent to kill us," Ray stated calmly, as the massive alien emerged from the vegetation, its enhanced musculature rippling beneath armor-like hide. The Corps barked a laugh that needed no translation. "To hunt you, to restore the natural order that your kind has disrupted." Natural order. Ray repeated, tasting the concept as if it were foreign to her. "There's nothing natural about order. The universe tends toward chaos, toward entropy. That's the only truth worth respecting." The Corps raised its weapon, a pulse rifle far more advanced than anything the humans had been permitted to bring to the planet's surface. "Your philosophizing means nothing, soft skin. You may have survived this long through trickery, but you stand before true evolutionary perfection now." Ray's lips curved into a smile that contained no warmth. "That's the difference between us. You evolved to be the perfect predator in your environment. We evolved to perfect our environment instead." Before the Corps could respond, Ray activated a small device at her wrist. Immediately, the ground beneath the alien warrior began to vibrate with low-frequency pulses, the same signature Rivera had used to attract the burrowing creature days earlier. Simultaneously, the luminescent pools around the clearing intensified their glow, responding to chemical catalysts the humans had carefully introduced into their waters. The Corps, sensing danger, fired its weapon, but Ray was already moving, diving behind a formation of volcanic rock as the pulse blast superheated the air where she had stood moments before. What followed wasn't combat in any conventional sense. It was orchestrated chaos. The burrower erupted from beneath the core's position, not attacking the warrior directly, but destabilizing the ground beneath it. As the alien stumbled, the colonial organisms in the pools responded to the disruption with synchronized electrical discharges that arced through the methanous atmosphere, creating a momentary electromagnetic dome over the clearing. The core's weapon systems failed instantly, circuits overloaded by the electromagnetic pulse. Disoriented by the multiple simultaneous threats, the warrior reverted to evolutionary instinct, turning to confront the burrower as the more immediate physical danger. This was exactly what Ray had anticipated. As the core engaged the burrower, Quinn deployed her final chemical compound, an aerosol derived from the combined pheromones of several local predator species. The airborne mixture triggered an override response in the planet's neurologically simplistic hunters, creating an artificial perception of overwhelming threat. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Every predator within half a kilometer, including the burrower and the colonial pool organisms, entered a state of panic, attacking anything that moved, including each other and the increasingly overwhelmed core warrior. Ray watched from her protected position as the carefully constructed chaos unfolded exactly as planned. The core fought valiantly, its natural strength and combat training allowing it to dispatch several attackers. But even evolutionary perfection had its limits when faced with an environment turned hostile in ways it had never adapted to counter. When the frenzy finally subsided, the core stood alone in the center of the clearing, wounded, disarmed, and surrounded by the corpses of Sharakar's predators. It turned slowly, searching for the human responsible for its predicament. Ray emerged from behind her cover, approaching the wounded warrior with deliberate steps. "You don't fight to win," the core growled, purple blood seeping from multiple lacerations across its massive form. "You fight to ensure others lose." "We don't fight at all," Ray corrected, stopping just beyond the core's reach. "Not the way you understand fighting. We survive by making sure you never know how to fight us effectively." The alien warrior studied her with newfound comprehension and unmistakable fear. "What are you?" Ray's response was delivered with quiet certainty. "We're not the strongest species, or the fastest, or the most naturally armed. We're just the ones you'll never figure out how to beat because we'll never play by rules you can understand." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to ensure that only the core and the council members watching through their surveillance could hear her next words. "We don't fight to win. We fight so you don't know how to win against us." When the recovery shuttle descended to Sharakar's surface at the completion of the 5-day trial, the council observers expected to find human remains, or at best a single survivor, clinging to the edges of sanity after witnessing the deaths of their companions. Instead, they found all 4 humans alive, gathered at the original landing coordinates, with equipment and specimens collected from across the planet's surface. More disturbing still, they were surrounded by a carefully arranged display of trophies, not hunting trophies in the traditional sense, but evidence of ecological manipulation that had fundamentally altered the behavior patterns of an entire region of Sarakar 4. The council chamber was unusually silent when Ray and her team were escorted inside several hours later. The tiered seating, previously filled with representatives from various Deathworlder species, now contained only the 3 founding members and a handful of their most trusted advisors. The rest had been dismissed, their presence deemed unnecessary for what was to follow. "The trial is complete," the Juthari elder announced, its clicking notably subdued. "The humans have survived." More than survived. The Varix representative added its form, for once completely visible, a sign of respect rarely granted to lesser species. "They have prevailed in a manner we have not witnessed before." The core delegate remained ominously silent, its gaze fixed on Ray, with an intensity that suggested personal stake in the proceedings. The warrior she had encountered on Sarakar 4, Ray realized had been genetically related to the delegate, perhaps offspring, or sibling. The Council acknowledges the successful completion of the blood trial, Xeris stated, from its podium. In accordance with our traditions, the human species will be reclassified in our hierarchy. Does the Council wish to propose a new designation? The three founders conferred briefly before the Varex spoke for them all. We propose designation as Category 9 Deathworlders, with specialized notation regarding their unique methodologies. A ripple of shock passed through the few assembled observers. Category 9 was reserved for the most dangerous, evolved predators in known space, a classification that the founding members themselves occupied. Does the human delegation accept this honor? Xeris inquired, internal organs pulsing with colors that suggested genuine curiosity. Ray stepped forward, her team arrayed behind her. They had shed their tattered environmental suits, standing now in standard Earth expeditionary uniforms that had been returned to them upon departure from Sarikar 4. The contrast between their unimposing physical forms and the honor being bestowed upon them wasn't lost on anyone present. The Earth delegation respectfully declines classification within your hierarchy, Ray stated, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Confusion rippled visibly through the observers, manifesting in twitching appendages and fluctuating colorations. The Juthari elders' blade limbs clicked rapidly in what the translation matrix rendered as indignation. You reject the highest honor our council can bestow. This is unprecedented. So was our approach on Sarikar 4, Ray pointed out calmly. And that's precisely my point. Humans don't fit into your classification system because we don't approach survival the way you do. We don't need to be recognized as apex predators. We just need potential adversaries to understand that if you encounter humans on your world, you should run. The core delegate rose to its full imposing height. You threaten the council. Not at all, Ray assured them. I'm offering perspective. Your hierarchy is based on evolved combat capability. Ours is based on adaptability and cooperative problem-solving. They're fundamentally incompatible frameworks. She reached into a pocket of her uniform and withdrew a folded piece of material, a map drawn from memory, on a sheet of processed arachnoid silk. Approaching the central platform, she spread it out for the council to see. The map detailed their 4 days on Sarikar 4 in meticulous precision, not just geographical features, but timestamps, trap locations, and ecological manipulations they had implemented. Along the margins were annotated questions. If you were here at this time, did you survive? If not, why not? This is how humans think, Ray explained, as the council studied the document with growing unease. Not in terms of direct confrontation, but in systems of cause and effect, in chains of consequences that extend beyond immediate action. The Varex representative's form rippled with what might have been grudging admiration. You turned the entire planet into a weapon. No, Ray corrected. We turned it into a teacher. Every environment has rules. We just learn them faster than most, then decide which ones to break. The council chambers remained silent for several long moments as the implications of her words and the evidence of the blood trial settled over the assembly. Finally, the Juthari elder spoke, its clicking subdued. What does Earth want from the council, if not recognition within our hierarchy? Ray considered the question carefully. This was the moment Captain Hernandez had prepared her for the diplomatic objective beneath the survival challenge. Earth wants what most sentient species want: peaceful coexistence where possible, and mutual understanding where interests diverge. We don't need to join your council. We don't need to adopt your classification system. We simply need you to understand that humans will choose their own methods of interaction with the galaxy. She paused, meeting each founder's gaze directly before continuing. You can classify us however you wish among yourselves. But remember this, if you see humans on your world, it could mean many things. We might be there as friends, as traders, as explorers. But if we're there as enemies, you won't know how we'll fight until it's too late to matter. A generation later, the story of Lieutenant Ray Morgan and her team's survival on Sarikar 4 had become standard curriculum in military academies across the sector. The Council still maintained its hierarchy of Deathworlders, but with a significant annotation concerning humans, not a numerical classification, but a simple designation: Chaos Strategists. Rey herself had long since returned to Earth, her mission of establishing humanity's reputation accomplished more thoroughly than even Captain Hernandez had anticipated. But her legacy remained in the form of the Blind Eye Brigade, a mixed-species special operations unit trained in human-style asymmetric warfare. In a secure chamber, deep within the Council station, an AI strategic analyst presented its quarterly security assessment to the three founders' descendants of those who had witnessed the first human blood trial. The human methodologies continue to spread. The AI reported its holographic display, showing adoption rates across various worlds. Their approach to conflict resolution defies conventional predictive modeling. The core representative grandchild of the delegate, who had faced Rey, leaned forward with interest. "Have you developed countermeasures?" The AI's display flickered momentarily, the equivalent of hesitation. "Negative. The fundamental nature of human strategic thinking involves constant adaptation. They are in essence a species-wide implementation of entropic warfare with consciousness." "Meaning," pressed the Juthari representative. "Meaning," the AI clarified, "that traditional Deathworlders evolved to be perfect predators within stable systems. Humans evolved to destabilize systems themselves. They are not merely apex predators, they are extinction-level evolutionary pressure given form and intelligence." In a training facility, orbiting a distant world, a group of young core warriors watched archived footage of the Sarikar IV trial. Their instructor, a battle-scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns, paused the playback on an image of Rey, standing alone in the clearing moments before the electromagnetic dome activated. "This," the instructor growled, pointing a massive clawed finger at the human figure, "is what awaits you if you fail to understand the enemy." The human female did not defeat her opponents. She made winning impossible for them. One of the younger warriors, its hide barely hardened from adolescence, raised a hand. "Master, what became of this human? Is she still alive?" The instructor's expression shifted subtly, years of ingrained wariness evident in the set of its massive shoulders. "Morgan now serves as strategic advisor to the Blind Eye Brigade. Her current whereabouts are classified." The young core seemed unsatisfied with this answer. "But if we were to encounter her—" "You won't," the instructor interrupted sharply. "Because if Morgan comes for you, you won't have time to ask questions." The viewing screen faded to black, leaving only a whispered warning hanging in the air. "The true apex predators aren't those who kill most efficiently. They're the ones who change the very meaning of predation itself."